Huffington Post attempt to take down Tucker Carlson's analysis of the vaccine numbers, they seemed to get a little confused about the math. So they did what they do best. Copy and paste some tweets. Today we'll be looking at this article and seeing how it argues. Well, it doesn't really argue much of anything. It just uses other people's works, puts it all in this article, and then slaps a title on it. So let's start out with that title. As you can see here, very loaded, very strongly inflammatorily worded. A better way, a way you could paraphrase that title, achieving the same meaning, would be someone or someone's turned Tucker Carlson's vaccine question, which was sickening, back at him. So that's the starting place. You don't start out with just like, oh, what's in the news today? The Dow is up 400. It's like, God, this sick fuck, he has this terrible thing out. But look, someone else, he's got his comeuppance now. So that's where this starts out. Let's not spend too much time focusing on what their argument is or isn't, because there isn't much of an argument. And it's basically, you could see the way I paraphrase their thesis. It's that snappy comebacks to Tucker's VAERS segment are a righteous sort of proof that he is incorrect about the level of certainty we have regarding vaccine safety. Now, how exact of of their thesis is that? It's hard to say because it's not clearly written article. It's a little scattershot. They're just throwing shit at the wall. But again, there's not much actual text in the article. It's mostly just other people's stuff. There's the John Oliver video at the beginning, and then there's a ton of embedded tweets with a few actual words written by Huffington Post interspersed throughout. Mostly what they did was use manipulation tactics. So let's start going through those. First one up, joke fraud. Joke fraud, for those unfamiliar, is where you misrepresent someone's position and then you skewer that misrepresented position. Now, if you go back to classic Daily Show, like Jon Stewart's stuff, he'll take people who sometimes he would do joke fraud, but often he would take people who actually have crazy positions, and he'll be like, hey, this is what the guy's saying, look at how crazy that is. He'll skewer their actual position. But joke fraud is where you lie about what they're saying, and then you skewer that caricature. So, they did that, not themselves, but through incorporation. So they start out the article by referencing the John Oliver segment, which was just, that's basically all John Oliver does these days is joke fraud. Earlier on, when his show first started, he did stuff that was kind of quasi-investigative journalism where he would do these deep dives, but he's just become more and more zealous, where he doesn't even try to take anything seriously. He just takes the most ridiculous portrait of an argument, puts that up there, and then attacks it with his bloodlusted zeal. So, they incorporated it, like, in the text here, but also in the video they have at the very top. It's not even a Huffington Post video. It's some Yahoo News video that plays clips of the John Oliver segment. That's, the very first thing you see when you click on the article is this giant, video screen. And an interesting thing about this John Oliver joke fraud was usually you misrepresent the guy's position, and then you're like, look at that jerk. He's saying nothing. Ew. You're like having fun with it. You're joking. But that wasn't even quite the tonality he had this time. He was angry. He was like, Like, I wrote here, it kind of read like the Kavanaugh at the hearing. I like beer! Rah, rah, rah! It had this, fear, aggression, self-righteousness thing going to it, where you felt uncomfortable watching it. Like, when you see that, if you were there, you'd be like, whoa, you okay, John? You want to take a second? Just, alright, take a deep breath. Everything's gonna be okay. We can talk to you about the numbers and, the vaccines. Everything's gonna be alright, man. But he looks like someone who's, on the verge of having some kind of mental break. But alright, so that's the first thing they did. Joke fraud through incorporation. Then we're moving on to the straw man feigning ignorance. So they, most of the article was just embedded tweets, and the first couple sets of tweets were these doctors. I don't mean to imply that they're not doctors. By the air quotes, I just mean to imply, who the fuck? I hate this appeal to authority stuff. Oh, well, they're doctors. We should, your own opinions are useless. This guy's a radiologist? Well, then he knows way more about vaccine safety than you do. You should shut the fuck up. That's what they're implying here. So, the first rebuttal doctor, who was a radiologist, according to Huffington Post, quote, said on Twitter that the VAERS database allows anyone to submit a report for any reason. Just to make sure we're on the same page, the VAERS database is where you're allowed to report adverse effects of vaccines. Because, the whole vaccine thing is weird. You're not allowed to sue the manufacturers and stuff. There is some government fund where the government will maybe pay you out some amount based on certain circumstances. But there's this database where they collect this information. So, this first doctor is making the point that, it's fucking bullshit, this whole... Dude, you should just ignore all this VAERS stuff, because anyone can submit it for any reason. That's the implication here. But what he's not saying is that it's a federal crime to knowingly submit a false report to the VAERS database. So if people, what is he implying is going on here? People are just submitting all these side effect reports because they're bored? I don't, he doesn't spell it out. I've never seen this argument spelled all the way out. It's a little bit weird, but, yeah, so that's his first way to try to attack the claim that we should even think about this VAERS database, which is just reporting a lot of side effects and some deaths. But he's saying we shouldn't even think about it because anyone can submit it for any reason. But keep in mind, if that reason you choose to submit it for is a knowingly false one, then that's a federal crime. That's a little bit of a caveat on the any reason. Oop, technical error. Sorry, I had to restart the video. The other point is that there's been a lot of anecdotal evidence about people being pressured by medical professionals, by their doctors, to not report adverse effects to the VAERS database, which isn't that out of line with our understanding that doctors have a weird incestuous relationship with the pharmaceutical industry, who obviously is making a huge profit off of all these vaccines. Everyone knows the stories. Well, I don't know if everyone does, but it's pretty well reported that the pharmaceutical people, companies, send out these salespeople who are these pretty ladies that go out and convince the doctors to use the name brand drugs that are on patent as opposed to the generics, which 90% of the time have the same effectivity rate, but cost way less and don't make any money for the pharmaceutical companies. So we know that there's a weird relationship where the doctors support the pharmaceutical companies, oftentimes at the cost of the patients. And it wouldn't be too surprising if they're doing the same thing with the VAERS database here. Now, the reports of doctors doing this, pressing the patients away from making these claims to the VAERS database, it's not too rock solid, but we are seeing those pop up. That might be a thing. Alright, next one up is about the second doctor rebuttal on the VAERS database, where this guy's beating around the bush. He's acting like, you can see what he says here, and he's not making a very clear statement, but he's acting like this VAERS database, like, yeah, there are people reporting all this stuff, but at the end of the day, it just means nothing at all. You can just ignore it. It means, if anything, it means the vaccines are 110% safe. So, let's put a little bit of context on the numbers this guy is talking about. Right now, the system is getting as many reports per week as it got all of last year. And you might think, oh, well, right now we're doing all these vaccinations. How many vaccinations did we do last year? Well, last year we did 190 million flu vaccines. That's a lot. I don't think we've done that many COVID vaccines yet. So, it's a huge jump. It's, not no difference. Whatever the system might be saying, whatever holes there might be in it, it's not nothing. And to just act like, oh, there's these numbers, and, don't worry about it. That's just a bullshit obfuscation. That database is reporting a huge discrepancy from what we're used to seeing with any normal vaccine. So it's something that a lot of reasonable people might want to look at. And when news organizations like the Huffington Post put out these obfuscation pieces, it does not sit well with people. It does not ensure confidence in the vaccine. It makes people either comply out of tribalism or push back and just have even less faith in the institutions, which is one of the main drivers as to why there's all this vaccine hesitancy in the first place. Alright. And then, he has this graph here, this doctor guy, which shows, after the max vaccinations, the deaths go down. So therefore, you're wrong. The implication being that, therefore, the vaccines don't cause any deaths. But that doesn't follow. And you notice he doesn't say that outright. He's just kind of implying it with the graph. Because obviously the graph doesn't show that. And, if we had a bunch of at-risk people like these 70-year-olds, and let's say, hypothetically, not saying that this is the case, but hypothetically, there's a 1 in 100,000 chance that you would die getting the vaccine, but a 1 in 10,000 chance that you're going to die from COVID, that you will both get COVID and die from it. Then the math seems to add up if you're in that group that you should get it. But if you have that same chance of dying from the vaccine and a much lower chance of dying from COVID, then maybe it doesn't make sense for you personally to get the vaccine. Arguments about what's best for society aside, that's a separate conversation. Now, the fact that he's kind of skewing the numbers here, that he's not, having an honest, straightforward discussion, that makes it a little, a little fishy, a little manipulative. It's not giving the full context to the numbers, is the point. Alright. The graph that he says here doesn't say anything about whether or not the vaccines are causing any deaths. It only talks about the overall death rate, which I think most people would agree the vaccines do bring that down overall. Certainly not some Tucker was arguing with in the segment. If you watch the segment, if you only read this article, you would kind of come away with the impression that Tucker somehow disagreed with the outcomes of that graph. But it's certainly not if you watch the Tucker segment. Alright. Next one up is this here undue emotion. So most of the Twitter comebacks on this thing are not making any logical points. They're not trying to get you to think this or that. They're just boom, like snap, like yeah, in your face, man. They're just trying to like rile people up, trying to create anger, or trying to like, incite, trying to get people, amp you up. So, if that's what journalism has become, is just like amp people up, yeah, like going to a pep rally, and just like, rah, 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 yeah, yeah, yeah. That's not what journalism is. They're supposed to be like giving you facts and information, letting you make decisions, which is clearly not what's going on here. Yeah, so, I think we're basically done here. Just a very lazy article. They, mostly just copied and pasted. They used that John Oliver video at the top, and then just embedded tweets all throughout. And I'll be honest, I was a little hesitant to do this article in the first place, because I wasn't even sure if Huffington Post was still a thing. But now, I think they might be forging a new frontier. A new type of journalism. Copy and post.